All right, so things to avoid, focusing too much on non-actionable tasks, like spending a bunch of time writing charters and policies and things like that. There's plenty of time to come back on that. Think about, again, the problems you're solving. Falling victim to the postpone perfection, like never rolling this out because you don't have enough things. We have this concept of a content tipping point. You want to have enough content that if someone goes searching, they're likely to find something or at least some examples of stuff. But if they can't find it, it's okay. They can request things. Don't just focus on fixing problems. If you find things in your organization and your assessment that are working really well, like, this one group does have a report request process that's really successful. Maybe you can take that and build on it. Instead of asking people to change too much, particularly the things that are working. Don't start off with overcomplicated processes or unrealistic levels of content creation. So, there's certain things that are more difficult than others. Like if you really want to document, point-to-point lineage across a 5-step BI process with, explicit detail of tables and translations and all that kind of stuff, like that maybe isn't the best thing to start with, right? Unless that's your sole focus, but I think about that. Not communicating and educating the new data stewards and the goals appropriately, just asking them to do the work without understanding why. Not considering your team's buy-in, capabilities, or availability. Forcing people to unnecessarily change how they work. So, figure out how to take these best practices data governance and incorporate them into how people are working now with slight marginal changes in what they're doing, instead of asking them to redo everything that they do. So that might include, basically, if they're already using a ticketing system to submit things about reports or whatever, continue using that ticketing system. Just have that ticketing system drive a step in the process where people are updating the knowledge base or whatever for governance. Don't ask people to work on hypothetical or unconnected content. So it's like start off and write glossary terms is a bad thing to do. I have really learned over the time that a lot of people, and this is a key takeaway if you are willing to take it, is that a lot of people think we're just going to start off with glossaries because there's this perception that for certain outcomes you're trying to get, that the big problem is that people don't agree on what things mean. So if you can create a glossary, document the definitions of things, that it'll solve the problem. But the reality is that glossaries don't exist in a vacuum. Like the definition for what is an active customer or a aged receivable or whatever, you might be able to think about that and come up with those on your own. But the real ability to understand and engage and define and use glossary terms is how they're connected to your processes. So that it could be how we have a report that includes all people that are more than 30 days late and their AR age balance, right? So that needs to get, how is that defined? It's just related to this report, and then that becomes much more easier to do. So asking people to document some critical reports where the emergent content out of that is glossary terms is going to be much, much, much more successful than asking people to hypothetically document glossary terms that aren't connected to any actual processes, right? So please consider that as you get. Now, of course, you can do bulk imports of things that already exist in the community or whatever. And then avoid focusing on sweeping content documentation efforts rather than this just-in-time thing. So that's the start small. So the other issue, the thing about this is think of this not as that you're trying to the result of your first 6 months or whatever or year of a data governance initiative. It's not like a project where you're going to get a bunch of stuff documented. That is something that you're going to do, but more importantly is that you are creating processes with which new things that are created or questions that come out, a year and a day later that aren't in there will be able to get to the right people and keep updating that. So your knowledge base should be something that's organic and grows over time. And we have an issue that I'm struggling with within our own implementations, that people can set up and automate their data systems to the cookbook to connect to the data systems and ingest the data model. And we do a session where we work with people and they set that up and they test it and they pull it and everyone's like, ooh, that's cool. And there's a feature in there that we teach them at that time. It's like, all right, now this is when you set that on a schedule so that it is always up to date, And for some reason, they'll say like, we're not ready for that. Let's look at it. And then, they'll unless we bug them about it, they really come back and do that. So it's a big miss if you don't put more emphasis on let's have a process to make sure this is going to be continually updated, particularly the stuff that is automated, or that there are processes to keep this going. instead of just document. Because any documentation that is out of date, that's 6 months older, as soon as people discover that, they're going to stop looking at it.